Maplewood had always been known for its grand Halloween celebrations. Every October, the small town transformed into a spook-filled wonderland, with houses decked out in elaborate decorations, glowing jack-o'-lanterns, and eerie cobwebs hanging from every tree. The air was filled with the smell of pumpkin spice and the excited chatter of children eagerly awaiting their night of trick-or-treating. For 12-year-old Ava Jackson, Halloween was her favorite time of the year. She had spent weeks preparing her costume, a homemade astronaut suit, complete with glowing LED lights and a helmet she'd crafted from an old fishbowl. Ava's best friend, Jake, was just as enthusiastic, donning a makeshift mad scientist outfit, complete with bubbling potions strapped to his belt. As the sun set, the sky turned a deep orange, casting an eerie glow over Maplewood. The streets were already filled with trick-or-treaters running from house to house, their bags slowly filling with candy. But as Ava and Jake made their way down Maple Avenue, something strange caught Ava's eye. "Hey, Jake, do you see that?" Ava pointed to the McPherson house, which had always been the centerpiece of Maplewood's Halloween festivities. Every year, the McPhersons went all out, creating a haunted yard filled with animatronic zombies, fog machines, and dozens of pumpkins. But tonight, something was off. The decorations were gone. "What the?" Jake muttered, stopping in his tracks. "Didn't they have, like, a whole graveyard set up here earlier?" Ava nodded. "Yeah, I saw it when we walked by this afternoon. It was huge. Now, all that remained was an empty yard, as if the decorations had never been there. The pumpkins, the gravestones, even the spooky skeleton on the porch had vanished without a trace. Maybe they took everything down early?" Jake suggested, though even he didn't seem convinced. "I mean, it's not that late yet. Who would take down decorations on Halloween night?" Ava said, her brow furrowed. "Something weird is going on." They continued walking down the street, but the strange occurrences didn't stop at the McPherson house. As they passed house after house, they noticed more decorations had mysteriously vanished. The Andersons' giant inflatable spider? Gone. The glow-in-the-dark skeletons hanging from the Clark's trees? Disappeared. Even the carved pumpkins that lined the sidewalks seemed to be missing. "This doesn't make any sense," Jake said, glancing nervously around. "It's like Halloween is disappearing right before our eyes." Ava felt a chill run down her spine. She reached into her bag for her phone, intending to snap a picture of one of the Nowberry yards, but stopped when she noticed something strange in the distance. A faint, glowing light hovered above the rooftops. It was small, almost like a drone, but it moved too fast, zipping from one house to the next, pausing briefly before darting off into the night. "Jake, look!" Ava whispered, pointing at the light. Jake squinted, his eyes following the glowing orb. "What is that? A prank? A drone?" "I don't think so," Ava replied, her heart pounding. The light seemed too deliberate, too precise, as if it was scanning the houses. And every time it passed over a house, decorations vanished, disappearing into thin air. They watched in stunned silence as the light darted over the house across the street. Instantly, the carved pumpkins on the porch blinked out of existence, followed by the cobwebs draped across the bushes and the ghostly figure hanging from the tree. Within seconds, the house was stripped bare of its Halloween spirit, and the light moved on. "This is crazy," Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's like something's stealing Halloween." Ava nodded, too shocked to speak. She felt a strange mixture of fear and curiosity bubbling inside her. "We need to follow it," she finally said. "Follow that?" Jake asked, his eyes wide. "Are you serious?" "Yeah," Ava replied, her voice steady. "Whatever's happening, it's not normal. We have to figure out what's going on." Jake hesitated, glancing around at the now empty yards. "Fine," he said after a moment. "But if we get abducted by aliens or something, it's your fault." The two friends hurried down the street, keeping their distance as they trailed the mysterious light. It moved swiftly, pausing briefly over each house, sucking up the Halloween decorations like a vacuum. Ava's mind raced with questions. What was the light? Where were the decorations going? And why was it happening now, on Halloween night? As they followed the light deeper into the neighborhood, it led them to the edge of town, where the houses gave way to an old, abandoned cornfield. The light hovered above the field for a moment before slowly descending, disappearing into the tall, swaying stalks of corn. Ava and Jake stopped at the edge of the field, panting from the chase. The cornfield had always been a spooky place, even in daylight, but now, under the cover of night, it felt downright terrifying. A soft breeze rustled the corn, and in the distance, they could hear the faint hum of machinery. "We have to go in," Ava whispered, her heart racing. "You're insane," Jake said, glancing nervously at the dark field. "But, let's do it." With a deep breath, the two friends stepped into the cornfield, determined to uncover the mystery of the vanishing decorations, and whatever strange force was behind it. But they had no idea just how close they were to discovering something far bigger, and far more dangerous, than they had ever imagined. The cornfield stretched out like a sea of shadows, the tall stalks swaying eerily in the night breeze. Ava and Jake crept forward, their flashlights casting narrow beams of light that barely pierced the darkness. The strange light they had been chasing had vanished into the depths of the field, and now all that remained was the soft rustle of corn and the low hum of machinery in the distance. "I really don't like this," Jake whispered, glancing nervously at the towering stalks around them. "This place gives me the creeps." "Just keep going," Ava replied, her voice steady but her heart racing. She wasn't about to back down now, not when they were so close to uncovering whatever was behind the vanishing decorations. "We need to find out what's in here." They moved deeper into the field, following the sound of the strange hum. It grew louder with each step, vibrating through the air like an invisible force. As they pushed through the dense corn, Jake stumbled over something metallic, nearly falling. "Whoa," he gasped, regaining his balance. "What is that?" Ava knelt down, brushing aside the corn stalks to reveal a long, silvery cable snaking through the dirt. It pulsed faintly with light, the same eerie glow as the object they had been following. "Definitely not farm equipment," she muttered, running her fingers along the smooth surface. "This is something else." Jake crouched next to her, his eyes wide. "This is weird. Are we sure we want to keep going?" Ava shot him a determined look. "We've come this far. We can't stop now." They continued following the glowing cable, which seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the cornfield. The hum grew louder, and soon, the sky above them began to change. What had once been a clear, starry night was now filled with strange, pulsating lights. They were faint at first, tiny pinpricks of green and blue that hovered far above the field. But as Ava and Jake moved closer, the lights grew brighter, zigzagging across the sky in erratic patterns. "Those can't be planes," Jake muttered, staring up at the lights in awe. "No way." Ava agreed. The lights were moving far too fast, darting through the sky like fireflies on speed. And there were too many of them, all zipping and flashing in ways that defied any aircraft she had ever seen. It was like they were searching for something, or someone. Suddenly, one of the lights dipped low, sweeping across the field like a searchlight. Ava and Jake ducked down into the corn, their hearts pounding. The light passed over them, its glow so intense it turned night into day for a brief moment before moving on. "That was close," Jake whispered, his voice shaky. "What are those things?" "I don't know," Ava replied, her mind racing. "But I think we're about to find out." They pressed forward, crouching low to avoid being spotted by the mysterious lights. The cable they had been following led them to a clearing in the center of the cornfield, and what they saw there made their jaws drop. In the middle of the clearing stood a massive, silver structure, half buried in the ground, half hovering just above it. It was sleek and curved, like a metallic shell, and it hummed with energy. The same eerie lights flickered around its surface, pulsating in time with the glowing cable they had followed. At the base of the structure, several smaller orbs, the same size as the one they had seen earlier, floated in a circle, scanning the area with beams of green light. Every now and then, one of the beams would lock onto an object, a piece of Halloween decoration, a carved pumpkin, or even a strand of cobweb, and with a soft hum, the object would dissolve into thin air, disappearing into the glowing orbs. "They're taking everything," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. "The decorations, the candy, everything." Ava's heart raced as she watched in disbelief. The aliens, or whatever they were, weren't just stealing decorations. They were erasing Halloween itself. She had to stop this. But how? "We need to tell someone," Jake said, tugging at Ava's sleeve. "We need to get out of here." Ava shook her head. "No. We need to find out what they're doing first. Look." She pointed toward the center of the clearing, where a group of tall, shadowy figures stood near the base of the silver structure. They were humanoid in shape but taller, with elongated limbs and featureless faces that seemed to blur at the edges. They moved with an unnatural fluidity, their heads tilting as they communicated in soft clicks and hums. One of the figures raised its arm, and a holographic screen appeared in midair, displaying a series of symbols and strange patterns. The other figures nodded in unison before turning their attention to the orbs, which were continuing to erase more Halloween decorations from the surrounding area. Ava's eyes widened. This wasn't just a random theft. These beings had a plan, a specific, calculated mission. But what could they possibly want with Halloween? "We have to figure out what that thing is," Ava whispered, her eyes fixed on the silver structure. "It's at the center of all this." "You mean that giant alien thing?" Jake asked, his voice laced with panic. "How are we supposed to get close without getting caught?" Ava bit her lip, thinking quickly. They couldn't risk running out into the open, but there was a chance they could sneak around the edge of the clearing, using the tall corn for cover. "We'll have to be quiet," she said. "If we can get close enough, maybe we can figure out what they're doing." Reluctantly, Jake nodded. "Okay. But if we get vaporized or abducted, I'm blaming you." With that, the two friends began creeping around the perimeter of the clearing, staying low and moving as quietly as possible. The eerie hum of the silver structure seemed to pulse in time with their racing hearts. Every now and then, one of the orbs would zip by, scanning the ground for more decorations to erase, but so far, they had remained unseen. As they approached the base of the structure, Ava's breath caught in her throat. Up close, the silver object was even more imposing, towering over them like a monolith from another world. Strange symbols flickered along its surface, and the air around it seemed to buzz with electricity. Just as they reached the edge of the clearing, one of the humanoid figures turned, its head tilting toward the cornfield. Ava and Jake froze, holding their breath. Had they been spotted? The figure stared for a moment, its featureless face unreadable. Then, with a soft click, it turned back to the others, seemingly satisfied that nothing was amiss. Ava exhaled slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. "That was close," she whispered. But before they could take another step, a sudden burst of light erupted from the structure, illuminating the entire clearing. Ava and Jake shielded their eyes as the light grew brighter, enveloping them in its glow. And then, in an instant, everything went dark. Ava's eyes fluttered open to the feeling of cool metal beneath her hands. Her head was pounding, and everything around her seemed blurry. For a moment, she couldn't tell where she was or what had happened. The last thing she remembered was the blinding light from the silver structure in the cornfield, but now. As her vision cleared, Ava realized she was inside some kind of strange, dimly lit room. The walls were smooth and curved, glowing faintly with a bluish tint. The air hummed softly, and the ground seemed to vibrate beneath her feet. "Ava?" Jake's voice came from beside her, groggy and confused. He was lying on the floor a few feet away, rubbing his eyes. "Jake!" Ava scrambled to her feet, helping him up. "Are you okay?" "I think so," Jake mumbled, looking around. Where are we? What happened?" "I don't know," Ava replied, her heart pounding. "But I think we're inside that thing. The structure in the cornfield." Jake's face paled as he took in their surroundings. "Inside? You mean they abducted us?" Before Ava could answer, a low hum filled the air, and a section of the wall slid open with a soft hiss. Both Ava and Jake spun around to face the source of the sound. Standing in the doorway were two tall figures, their elongated bodies illuminated by the soft glow of the room. They were just as Ava had seen before, humanoid, but with no distinct facial features, their skin a shimmering silver gray. Their eyes, if they had any, were hidden behind smooth, oval-shaped faces that reflected the light. Ava's throat went dry. These were the aliens. The ones responsible for the vanishing decorations, for stealing Halloween itself. The two figures stepped forward, their movements fluid and silent. They stopped just a few feet away from Ava and Jake, tilting their heads slightly, as if studying the two humans. Ava tensed, her mind racing. What were they going to do? Were they about to be dissected? Taken to another planet? To her surprise, one of the aliens raised a hand, and a soft, melodic sound filled the room. It wasn't speech, not like anything Ava had ever heard, but it was clearly a form of communication. The second alien gestured toward a glowing panel on the wall, and suddenly, the room was filled with a holographic display. Floating in the air before them was a projection of Earth, spinning slowly in space. Red dots flickered across the surface of the planet, marking specific locations. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Each red dot was placed over a town, just like Maplewood. And as she looked closer, she realized something terrifying. Every one of those towns was experiencing the same thing. The same vanishing Halloween decorations, the same eerie lights in the sky. It wasn't just happening in Maplewood, it was happening all over the world. Jake took a step back, his eyes wide with fear. They're taking Halloween everywhere. Ava stared at the hologram, her mind reeling. This was bigger than she had imagined. Much bigger. The aliens weren't just stealing decorations, they were targeting specific towns, collecting something important. The first alien made another sound, this time a series of rhythmic clicks and hums. The hologram shifted, zooming in on the Earth and highlighting a new image, a swirling, glowing vortex that seemed to hover just above the surface of the planet. It pulsed with energy, radiating outward in waves that enveloped the red dots on the map. "What is that?" Ava asked, her voice trembling. The alien tilted its head, and suddenly, a single word flashed across the holographic display, written in bold, glowing symbols. Harvest. Ava's stomach dropped. Harvest, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. They're harvesting something? Before they could process the information, the second alien raised its hand, and another hologram appeared beside the first. This time, the image was more detailed. It showed the aliens' glowing orbs, the ones they had seen stealing the Halloween decorations, but now Ava understood, they weren't just taking objects. The orbs were extracting something invisible. Something from the decorations, the pumpkins, and even the trick-or-treaters themselves. They're harvesting energy, Ava realized aloud. The energy of Halloween. Jake blinked in disbelief. You mean, like, the excitement? The fear? The fun? Ava nodded slowly. It made sense, in a strange, twisted way. Halloween was a time when people came together, shared stories, celebrated, and embraced both fear and joy. The emotions, the atmosphere, it all created a unique kind of energy, one that these aliens were harvesting. But why? Jake asked, still staring at the hologram. What do they need it for? As if in response to his question, the first alien gestured again, and the hologram shifted once more. This time, the image zoomed in on a massive structure floating in space, a colossal, spherical object that dwarfed any spacecraft Ava had ever seen. It was dark and menacing, surrounded by swirling clouds of energy, the same energy they had seen being harvested from Earth. The word on the holographic display changed again, flashing a new message. Restoration. Ava's eyes widened. They're using the energy to restore something. Maybe their planet. Or their technology. Jake shook his head, still trying to process everything. So they're stealing Halloween, to fix their world? Before Ava could answer, the aliens stepped forward again, their tall, featureless figures towering over the two humans. They raised their hands, and the hum of the room grew louder. Ava felt a strange sensation in her chest, like a pull, as if something deep inside her was being drawn toward the aliens. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and the holographic display flickered. The two aliens looked at each other, and a sharp, discordant noise echoed through the room. It wasn't melodic or calm like before, it was a sound of alarm. Ava's heart raced. Something was happening. Something the aliens hadn't expected. The wall behind them slid open with a hiss, and without hesitation, Ava grabbed Jake's arm. "Run!" she shouted. They bolted through the opening, their feet pounding against the cold metal floor as they sprinted down a long, curving hallway. The hum of the alien structure was growing louder, vibrating through the walls like a heartbeat. "They're coming after us," Jake panted, glancing over his shoulder. Ava didn't dare look back. She could hear the soft, metallic footsteps of the aliens behind them, gaining speed. They had to escape. But how? They were inside a massive alien ship, deep in the cornfield, with no way out. As they turned a corner, Ava spotted something up ahead, an open hatch that led outside. Without thinking, she sprinted toward it, dragging Jake along with her. They burst through the hatch and tumbled out into the cornfield, gasping for breath. But as they stood up, something caught their attention, a deafening roar from above. They looked up just in time to see the sky split open, revealing a massive, swirling vortex of light. The same vortex they had seen in the hologram. Ava's stomach twisted with fear. The harvest had begun. Ava and Jake stumbled through the tall corn, the massive vortex roaring above them. The swirling light in the sky seemed to pulse, growing larger and more intense with each passing second. The air felt heavy, like static electricity before a storm. It was as if the entire atmosphere was alive, humming with an alien energy neither of them understood. "We have to warn the town," Ava shouted, trying to keep her voice steady over the noise. She grabbed Jake's arm, pulling him through the cornfield. They had to get back to Maplewood, to tell everyone what they'd seen before it was too late. Jake nodded, his face pale. "But who's going to believe us?" he asked between labored breaths. "We tell people aliens are stealing Halloween, and they'll think we're crazy." Ava grimaced, knowing he was right. Who would believe two kids? Even if they told the truth, no one had seen what they had. But there was no time to think about that now. They needed to act fast. The vortex was growing stronger, and she had a gut feeling that whatever the aliens were planning was reaching a critical point. Bursting out of the cornfield, they found themselves at the edge of Maplewood. The once bustling town looked eerily still in the faint light of the swirling sky. It wasn't late, but most of the Halloween decorations were already gone, and the streets were unusually quiet. Where were all the trick-or-treaters? Where was the laughter, the fun? "Look!" Jake pointed to a group of kids down the street. They were dressed in costumes, but something was wrong. They were walking slowly, almost robotically, their faces blank and emotionless. Their once colorful costumes now looked faded, drained of life. "They're like zombies," Ava whispered, horrified. As they hurried closer, they noticed the eerie lights hovering over the kids, scanning them just as they had scanned the decorations. The lights weren't just stealing candy and decorations, they were draining the very essence of Halloween from the people who celebrated it. "We have to stop this," Ava said, clenching her fists. "They're taking more than just stuff. They're stealing the spirit of the holiday." "But how?" Jake asked, his voice shaking. "We don't even know how to fight them. We're just two kids." Ava thought quickly. They didn't have the tools to stop the aliens directly, but maybe they could disrupt the harvest. If they could figure out how the aliens were powering the vortex or controlling the orbs, they might be able to weaken their hold on the town. But they would need help. "We need to tell as many people as we can," Ava said. "We can't stop the aliens by ourselves, but if we get enough people to believe us, we might be able to make a difference." Jake's eyes widened. "Who? We can't just go knocking on doors telling people about aliens." Ava paused, thinking hard. Then, an idea sparked. The town Halloween party. Jake blinked. The party at the town hall? But it's our best chance. Ava interrupted. Everyone will be there. We need to get them to listen to us. If we can convince them, maybe we can figure out a way to disrupt whatever the aliens are doing. Jake hesitated but then nodded. All right, let's go. But this is going to be the craziest thing we've ever done. They sprinted toward the town hall, the eerie light from the vortex above casting long shadows over the streets. As they ran, the alien orbs floated silently overhead, continuing their work of draining Maplewood of its Halloween spirit. Ava's heart raced, not just from the running but from the overwhelming sense that time was running out. Whatever the aliens were planning, it was nearing completion. When they reached the town hall, the building was packed. Inside, adults mingled in hastily thrown-together costumes, and children ran around, playing games and filling their bags with candy. But even here, Ava could sense something was off. The decorations were less elaborate than usual, the costumes duller, the laughter quieter. The festive energy that should have filled the air was fading, slowly but surely. Ava and Jake pushed their way through the crowd, trying to find anyone who would listen. They spotted Mayor Goodwin, dressed in a cheap Dracula costume, chatting with a group of local parents near the stage. Mayor Goodwin. Ava called out, her voice cutting through the noise. The mayor turned, a bemused smile on his face. Well, if it isn't Ava and Jake. What's going on, kids? Are you enjoying the party? Ava glanced at Jake, then back at the mayor, her heart pounding. You have to listen to us. Something's happening. The decorations, the spirit of Halloween, it's being stolen. We've seen it. There's aliens, and there. The mayor chuckled, raising an eyebrow. Aliens? Well, now, that's quite the Halloween tale. You two should consider entering the costume contest with a story like that. I'm serious. Ava insisted, grabbing his arm. We've seen them. They're draining the energy from the town. Look around. It's already starting. The mayor's smile faded slightly as he glanced around, noticing for the first time the strange emptiness in the air. The laughter wasn't as loud as it had been an hour ago, and several of the decorations had started to dim, as if the lights were losing power. Still, he shook his head. Ava, I don't know what you think you've seen, but... A sudden tremor shook the ground, cutting him off. The building rattled, and several of the partygoers gasped, looking up as the lights flickered. Through the windows, Ava and Jake could see the vortex in the sky growing larger, its light swirling faster, casting a strange glow over the town. What is that? One of the parents asked, pointing out the window. That's what we've been trying to tell you. Jake said, his voice rising with urgency. The aliens are behind it. They're harvesting Halloween energy. We have to do something. For a moment, there was a stunned silence as everyone stared at the swirling vortex. Then, the crowd erupted into chaos. People began to panic, rushing for the doors, shouting questions, and looking for answers. Everyone, calm down. Mayor Goodwin shouted over the noise, but his voice was shaky. He looked at Ava and Jake, his face pale. You really think this is aliens? We know it is, Ava said firmly. They're draining the spirit of Halloween to fuel that thing in the sky. If we don't stop them, they're going to take everything. Mayor Goodwin looked around, his eyes wide with disbelief. But then, he nodded. What do we do? Ava hesitated, her mind racing. What could they do? The aliens had advanced technology, and she and Jake were just kids. But as she looked at the panicked crowd, she realized there was something the aliens hadn't accounted for: people. They're feeding on the energy of fear and excitement, Ava said, thinking aloud. If we can disrupt that, if we can stop feeding them that energy, we might be able to weaken their control. Jake's eyes lit up with understanding. We need to stop being afraid. If we can show the aliens that we're not scared of them, they won't be able to take our energy. The mayor blinked, clearly not fully grasping the concept, but he nodded. All right, how do we do that? Ava turned to the crowd, her heart pounding. Everyone, she shouted, her voice rising above the noise. We need to stay calm. We can't let them scare us. If we stay strong, if we keep celebrating Halloween, they won't win. Some of the adults looked at her skeptically, but others began to nod, slowly understanding what was happening. The tremors in the ground grew stronger, and outside, the light from the vortex flickered erratically. Mayor Goodwin took a deep breath, then raised his arms. You heard her. We're not giving up Halloween without a fight. Everyone, keep the party going. We need to show these aliens that we're not afraid. A murmur ran through the crowd, and slowly, people began to pick up where they had left off. Music played from the speakers, and children resumed their games, though their smiles were nervous. The adults joined in, dancing, laughing, trying to push back the fear. The town was fighting back the only way they knew how, by refusing to let go of the spirit of Halloween. As Ava watched the town rally together, her heart swelled with hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. And maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to weaken the aliens' hold on Maplewood. But as she glanced up at the sky, where the vortex continued to swirl, she knew this was only the beginning of their fight. As the town rallied behind Ava and Jake, the eerie lights in the sky flickered and pulsed. The swirling vortex above Maplewood continued to grow, but now its light seemed more erratic, as if the energy it was feeding on had been interrupted. The townspeople were doing their best to stay calm, to keep the Halloween spirit alive, but Ava knew that the aliens wouldn't just give up. Something told her this was far from over. Suddenly, Ava's walkie-talkie crackled to life. It was her younger brother, Sam, who had stayed behind at home. Ava! You need to get home. There's something weird going on here. Sam's voice was shaky and filled with panic. Ava's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What's happening? It's Mom's new neighbor. The one who moved in last week. I saw him outside. He's not normal, Ava. He looks like one of them. A cold chill ran down Ava's spine. The idea that aliens might be blending in with the town, disguising themselves as ordinary people, was something she hadn't considered. But it made sense. What better way to monitor their harvest than by placing themselves among the very people they were targeting? We're on our way. Ava shouted into the walkie-talkie, grabbing Jake by the arm. We need to get to my house, now. As they ran through the streets, Ava's mind raced. How long had the aliens been watching Maplewood? Had they been living among them, silently preparing for the harvest? The thought made her stomach churn. By the time they reached Ava's house, the sky was an ominous shade of deep purple, with the vortex swirling ever faster. They burst through the front door, finding Sam huddled by the window, his face pale. There! Look! Sam pointed toward the house next door, where a man stood on the porch. He was tall, with slicked back hair and a face that seemed too smooth, too perfect. His eyes glowed faintly, the same eerie green as the lights in the sky. Ava froze, her breath catching in her throat. There was no mistaking it, the neighbor wasn't human. He was one of them. I've seen him scanning the houses, Sam whispered. Every night, he walks around with this weird device. I think he's part of the group collecting energy. Ava nodded, her mind racing. The aliens were hiding in plain sight, blending into the town to supervise the harvest. If they could expose one of them, it might be enough to convince the rest of the town that this was real, that the threat wasn't just some Halloween prank gone wrong. We need to figure out what he's doing, Ava said, her voice low. But we can't just go up to him. He'll know we're onto him. Jake peered through the window, watching the alien neighbor carefully. What if we catch him in the act? If we can get proof that he's not human, we can show everyone. Ava nodded slowly. Okay, but we'll need a plan. We can't just confront him without backup. Just then, they heard a knock on the front door. The sound was so unexpected and out of place that all three of them jumped. Ava slowly moved toward the door, motioning for Sam and Jake to stay back. She peeked through the window and gasped. It was the neighbor. His expression was eerily calm, but his eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of the porch. He raised his hand and knocked again, louder this time. "Ava," Jake whispered. "What do we do?" She glanced back at them, her mind racing. They couldn't let him in. But if they ignored him, it might tip him off that they knew something. Taking a deep breath, Ava made a quick decision. "We'll talk to him," she said, her voice steady. "But we'll be careful. Stick together." With her heart pounding in her chest, Ava opened the door, her face composed. "Oh, hi, Mr. Delmont," she said, forcing a smile. "Is there something we can help you with?" Mr. Delmont's expression didn't change. His movements were unnervingly smooth, like he was trying too hard to mimic human behavior. "I noticed some strange activity in the neighborhood," he said, his voice calm but hollow, like a recording. "I wanted to make sure you're all safe." Ava swallowed hard. "We're fine, thanks. Just a little shaken by everything that's been happening." Mr. Delmont tilted his head slightly, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Good. It's important to stay calm in times like these." Ava felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something deeply unsettling about the way he spoke, like he was trying to comfort them but didn't quite understand how humans worked. "We appreciate your concern," Ava said, trying to keep the conversation short. "But we've got everything under control." For a moment, there was an uncomfortable silence. Then, without warning, Mr. Delmont's expression shifted ever so slightly. His lips curled into a small, tight smile, but his eyes remained cold and lifeless. "Good to know," he said, his voice low. "Stay safe, Ava." He turned and walked away, his movements too precise, too mechanical. As soon as he was out of sight, Ava slammed the door shut, her hands trembling. "That was freaky," Jake whispered, his face pale. "He definitely knows something." "He's watching us," Ava said, pacing nervously. "He's part of the harvest. We need to figure out how to stop him." Sam, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. "I've seen him using this weird device. It glows, and it makes this strange sound when he points it at houses. I think that's how he's collecting the energy." Ava's eyes widened. "If we can get that device, we can show everyone that he's not human. It's the proof we need. But how are we supposed to steal something from an alien without getting caught?" Jake asked, his voice tense. Ava thought for a moment. "We'll need a distraction. Something to draw him away from his house long enough for us to sneak in and find the device." "Like what?" Sam asked. Ava's mind raced. Then, an idea hit her. Halloween's about scaring people, right? What if we turn the tables and scare him? If we can make him think the town is fighting back, it might throw him off his guard. Jake blinked. "You want to scare an alien?" Ava grinned. "Exactly." That night, Ava, Jake, and Sam put their plan into action. They gathered some of the remaining kids from the neighborhood, those who weren't already drained of their Halloween spirit, and enlisted their help. They told them about the aliens, the harvest, and how they needed to scare Mr. Delmont out of his house so they could sneak in and steal his device. At first, the kids were skeptical, but as they shared more details, and the eerie lights above continued to swirl, the group realized that something much bigger was happening. Using what they had left of their Halloween decorations, they created an elaborate prank. The kids set up fog machines, motion-activated jump scares, and spooky noises outside Mr. Delmont's house. They crafted fake alien messages, using walkie-talkies and speakers to make it sound like something was going wrong with the harvest. When everything was ready, Ava and Jake watched from a distance as Mr. Delmont emerged from his house, his glowing eyes scanning the strange setup. He paused, listening to the garbled alien messages coming from the speakers. For the first time, his perfectly calm demeanor faltered. He stepped forward, visibly confused. Ava took her chance. She and Jake dashed across the street, sneaking into Mr. Delmont's house while the kids kept him distracted. Inside, the house was sparse, cold and metallic, nothing like a typical human home. In the living room, they found it, a strange, glowing device pulsing with the same energy as the lights in the sky. "This is it," Jake whispered, grabbing the device. "Let's go." As they slipped out of the house, Ava glanced back at Mr. Delmont. He was staring directly at them now, his glowing eyes narrowing in suspicion. They had the device, but they weren't out of danger yet. The harvest was still underway, and the aliens weren't going to let them stop it without a fight. Ava's heart pounded as she and Jake sprinted down the street, clutching the strange alien device. The cold night air stung her lungs, but she couldn't stop now. Behind them, Mr. Delmont's glowing eyes tracked their every move, and she knew it wouldn't be long before he gave chase. "We need to hide," Jake gasped, struggling to keep pace. "He's going to catch us." Ava's mind raced. They couldn't go home, that would be the first place Mr. Delmont would check. And they couldn't run forever. She looked around, spotting a small, run-down shed at the edge of the park. It wasn't much, but it was their best chance to buy some time. "In there." Ava pointed to the shed, and they darted toward it, ducking inside just as Mr. Delmont emerged from the shadows. Ava held her breath, watching through a crack in the door as the alien neighbor scanned the street. His eyes glowed brighter, almost furious, as he searched for them. "He's definitely onto us," Jake whispered, crouching low next to her. Ava nodded. "But we've got the device. Now we just need to figure out how it works." Jake stared at the strange, glowing object in his hands. It was small and sleek, shaped like a silver orb with thin lines of green light running along its surface. The hum it emitted was soft but constant, like it was alive. "I have no idea what to do with this," Jake admitted, turning the orb over in his hands. "What if we mess it up and it blows up or something?" Ava bit her lip, considering their options. They didn't have much time. If they could figure out how the device worked, maybe they could disrupt the harvest and stop the aliens from draining the town's energy. But there was also a very real risk that using the device wrong could backfire in ways they couldn't predict. "Look," Ava said, pointing to a series of small symbols etched into the orb's surface. They looked similar to the ones she had seen in the holograms aboard the alien ship. "These markings, maybe they're controls?" Jake squinted at the symbols. "Yeah, but we can't read alien." Ava frowned. There had to be a way to decipher the controls. The aliens had been using the device to scan the town, to steal Halloween energy. Maybe if they could reverse that process, they could return the energy to the town and stop the harvest. Suddenly, the orb pulsed brighter, as if sensing their intentions. The lines of green light shifted, forming new patterns that began to flicker across its surface. Ava and Jake exchanged a nervous glance. "I think it's responding to us," Ava whispered, her heart racing. "We need to be careful." Jake hesitated, then carefully touched one of the glowing symbols. The device vibrated softly in his hands, and a holographic display emerged from the orb, projecting an image of the swirling vortex in the sky. A map of the town appeared, showing glowing dots where Halloween decorations, costumes, and even the energy from trick-or-treaters had been stolen. "This must be how they're tracking everything," Ava said, studying the display. "It's like a control panel for the harvest." "If we can mess with this," Jake muttered, his fingers hovering over the hologram. "Maybe we can shut it down." Ava nodded, her mind racing. "We need to reverse the process. If we can return the energy they've already stolen, we might be able to stop the vortex from growing any bigger." Jake frowned, thinking hard. "How do we do that? I don't want to accidentally, supercharge the thing and make it worse." Ava stared at the swirling hologram, her thoughts clicking into place. "Wait, remember how the aliens were harvesting the energy from fear and excitement? If we can flood the system with too much of that, it might overload their technology." Jake's eyes lit up with realization. "You mean, supercharge Halloween?" "Exactly," Ava said. "We need to get the whole town to go all out with Halloween spirit. Fear, fun, excitement, all of it. If we overwhelm the harvest with too much energy, the system might short-circuit and collapse." Jake raised an eyebrow. That sounds awesome, but also incredibly risky. What if it makes the vortex stronger? It's a risk we have to take, Ava said, determination hardening her voice. We can't let them keep stealing from us. If we don't fight back, they'll drain everything. Just as Jake nodded in agreement, a loud crash echoed from outside the shed. Ava peeked through the crack in the door and saw Mr. Delmont standing in the street, his glowing eyes locked onto the shed. His calm, human disguise was gone now, his face had twisted into something more alien, more monstrous. His smooth, silver skin rippled, and the light in his eyes intensified. He's coming, Jake whispered, backing away from the door. Ava clutched the orb tightly. We need to move. Now. They bolted out the back of the shed, racing through the park and into the heart of the town. Mr. Delmont was close behind them, moving faster than any human should be able to. Ava's heart raced as they dashed between houses, desperately trying to stay out of sight. They reached the town square, where the Halloween party had spilled out onto the streets. Despite the growing panic, people were still trying to celebrate, kids in costumes ran from booth to booth, and music played from speakers near the town hall. But there was an eerie undertone now, as if the townspeople sensed that something was terribly wrong. We have to get everyone to join in, Ava said, breathless. If we can make this the biggest, craziest Halloween party Maplewood has ever seen, it might be enough. But how do we explain that to them? Jake asked, glancing nervously at the approaching figure of Mr. Delmont, who was now moving through the crowd with unsettling ease. Ava grabbed a microphone from the DJ booth and stepped up onto the stage, her hands shaking. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. This was it, their last chance to save Halloween. Everyone! Ava's voice echoed through the square, drawing the attention of the crowd. I know this sounds crazy, but you have to trust me. The weird stuff that's been happening tonight, the missing decorations, the lights in the sky, it's because of them. She pointed to Mr. Delmont, who was now standing at the edge of the square, his glowing eyes fixed on her. He's not one of us. He's part of an alien invasion, and they're stealing Halloween from us. They're taking the spirit of Halloween to fuel their invasion, but we can stop them. The crowd murmured in confusion, unsure of what to make of her claims. They're feeding on our fear and excitement, Ava continued, her voice rising. But if we turn that against them, if we celebrate harder than we ever have before, we can overload their system. We can take back Halloween. For a moment, the square was silent. Then, a few people in the crowd began to cheer. The idea, as wild as it was, started to catch on. One by one, kids began running around, laughing and shouting, throwing themselves into the Halloween spirit. Parents joined in, decorating the square with whatever they had left, turning the entire area into a chaotic, fun-filled carnival. The atmosphere in the square began to change. Laughter filled the air, and excitement surged through the crowd. It was as if the very energy of Halloween itself was coming back to life, stronger than ever. Jake held up the alien device, which began to vibrate violently in his hands. It's working, he shouted over the noise. The energy is overloading the system. Above them, the vortex in the sky flickered and pulsed. The swirling light began to destabilize, cracking and splitting as if it couldn't contain the surge of energy coming from the town. The alien orbs, which had been floating above the houses, sputtered and fizzled out, dropping to the ground like dead machines. Mr. Delmont staggered, his glowing eyes dimming. His disguise flickered, revealing his true alien form, tall and gaunt, with silver skin and hollow, black eyes. He let out a low, distorted hiss, his body convulsing as the energy overloaded his system. Ava stepped forward, clutching the microphone. This is our town, and this is our holiday. You're not taking Halloween from us. With a final, ear-splitting roar, the vortex above them collapsed in on itself, disappearing in a flash of light. The alien devices short-circuited and shut down, and the swirling lights in the sky vanished, leaving only the stars above. The crowd erupted into cheers, hugging and celebrating as the threat dissolved before their eyes. Ava and Jake collapsed onto a bench, exhausted but exhilarated. They had done it, they had saved Halloween. As the crowd celebrated around them, Ava glanced up at the now clear sky and smiled. "Happy Halloween," she whispered. Ava and Jake sat on the bench, catching their breath as the crowd around them cheered, oblivious to how close they had come to losing everything. The town had erupted into a celebration unlike any other, Halloween spirit stronger than ever. But while the townspeople were thrilled, Ava couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her gut. The vortex might be gone, but the fight was far from over. Ava turned to Jake, her face serious. "We stopped the harvest, but the aliens, they're still out there. Mr. Delmont wasn't working alone. There's got to be more of them." Jake wiped the sweat from his brow and nodded. "Yeah, and they're not just going to give up because we ruined one part of their plan. What do we do now?" Ava looked out at the crowd, then back at the alien device in Jake's hand. "We need to prepare. If there are more of them, we have to be ready. We can't let them catch us off guard again." "How, though?" Jake asked, frowning. "I mean, we barely survived this time. We need more than just the two of us." Ava stood up, her mind racing. Jake was right, they needed help. More than that, they needed a group, a team that could protect the town from the alien threat. The thought of forming a resistance sounded like something straight out of one of the sci-fi books Ava loved, but the reality of it was now staring her in the face. "We'll start small," Ava said, her voice gaining strength as the idea took shape. "First, we'll recruit the kids who helped with the distraction earlier. They already know something's going on. If we can get them on our side, we'll have a team to watch the town, to look for any signs of more aliens." Jake nodded, warming to the idea. "Okay. But what about the adults? They're not going to believe us, at least not until it's too late." Ava thought for a moment. "We don't need all of them. Just a few who can help us when things get bad. Mayor Goodwin saw what happened tonight. He might not understand everything, but he knows we're telling the truth. And my dad," Jake added. "He's into all that conspiracy stuff. He's been talking about UFO sightings for years. If anyone's going to believe this, it's him." Ava smiled. "Perfect. We'll need people who can help us with the technical side of things, too. We don't know how much more alien technology is out there, and we need to be able to figure it out when we find it." Jake glanced down at the alien device still in his hands. "Yeah, this thing is just the tip of the iceberg. Who knows what other tech they've got hidden?" Ava nodded grimly. "Exactly. And we need to stay one step ahead of them." The two of them stood up, their resolve solidifying. The party around them continued, the people of Maplewood blissfully unaware of the lurking danger, but Ava and Jake knew better. They had stopped one invasion, but there was no guarantee the aliens wouldn't come back, stronger, smarter, and more prepared. The next morning, Ava and Jake gathered the kids who had helped them the night before at the park. Sam was there, along with a few others, like Lily, a classmate of Jake's who had been the mastermind behind the fake alien messages, and Derek, a tech-savvy kid known for hacking school computers. Ava stood in front of the small group, her heart pounding in her chest. It was one thing to stop a Halloween invasion, but organizing a group of kids to defend the town against alien invaders? It felt overwhelming. But she pushed down her nerves. This had to be done. "Thanks for coming," Ava began, looking around at the group. "You all saw what happened last night. The aliens almost stole Halloween, and maybe more. We stopped them this time, but they're not going to give up. We need to be ready." The kids exchanged nervous glances, but no one spoke. Jake stepped forward, holding up the alien device they had stolen from Mr. Delmont. "This is their tech. They've been using it to track and harvest our energy. Ava and I think there are more of them out there, maybe even hiding in the town. If we don't figure out how to stop them for good, it's only a matter of time before they try again." Lily raised her hand. "So, what exactly are you saying? We're supposed to fight aliens?" Ava nodded. "Yeah, but not in the way you're thinking. We're not soldiers. We're kids, but we can watch the town, look for signs of more aliens, figure out their weaknesses. And when the time comes, we can warn everyone, before it's too late. Derek, who had been eyeing the alien device, spoke up. If we're going to take them on, we need to understand their tech. That thing is advanced, way beyond anything we've seen. But I might be able to figure out how it works, if I have time to study it. Jake handed Derek the device. It's all yours. Just be careful with it. We don't want to accidentally trigger another harvest. Ava looked around at the group. This isn't going to be easy. We're probably going to run into more aliens, and they might be even more dangerous than the ones we dealt with last night. But we can't let them take our town. We can't let them take our future. The kids nodded, their faces a mix of fear and determination. They were scared, but Ava could see the same fire in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. They were ready to fight back. Okay, Ava said, taking a deep breath. We're the Maplewood Resistance now. Our job is to protect this town, and each other. We meet after school every day, keep an eye on anything weird going on in the area, and stay in touch. If we find anything suspicious, we report it immediately. Lily raised her hand again. What about Mr. Delmont? He's still out there, right? Ava nodded. He's not the only one. There could be more like him, disguised as regular people. We need to keep a low profile for now, but if we find another alien, we'll expose them, just like we did with him. As the meeting wrapped up, the kids dispersed, their minds buzzing with the enormity of what lay ahead. Jake lingered behind with Ava, both of them watching as the others headed home. You think we're really ready for this? Jake asked, his voice low. Ava hesitated, then nodded. I don't know if we're ready. But I do know we're the only ones who can do it. We've seen what's out there. We've fought back. And now, we have to keep fighting. Jake smiled, a spark of excitement returning to his eyes. All right. Maplewood Resistance, then. I guess we're officially the town's first line of defense. Ava smiled back, feeling a surge of hope. Yeah. And if those aliens come back, they'll regret ever messing with Halloween. The following week, Ava and Jake worked tirelessly, keeping their eyes on the town, listening for any sign of strange activity. They met with the Resistance kids after school, gathering information and training themselves to spot anything that seemed out of place. Lily and Derek took charge of technology, analyzing the alien device and figuring out how it worked. They didn't fully understand it yet, but they were making progress. One evening, as Ava was about to head home, her walkie-talkie crackled to life again. It was Sam. Ava, you need to get to the school right now, Sam's voice came through, frantic. There's something weird happening. I think it's them. Ava's stomach dropped. We're on our way. She grabbed Jake and rushed toward the school, her mind racing. The aliens hadn't given up. They were back, and this time, they were ready for a fight. As they neared the school, Ava spotted a strange, flickering light near the entrance. Her heart pounded as she realized what it was, an alien orb, hovering above the ground, scanning the building. And standing next to it was a figure she recognized all too well. Mr. Delmont. Ava and Jake crouched behind a bush, watching in horror as Mr. Delmont lifted another alien device, aiming it at the school. The harvest had begun again. This time, Ava whispered, "We're going to stop them for good." The eerie glow of the alien orb cast long, unnatural shadows across the school's front lawn. Ava and Jake crouched behind the bushes, their hearts racing. Mr. Delmont, now fully in his alien form, stood near the entrance, his eyes glowing with the same green light they had seen during the harvest. The orb floated next to him, scanning the building with mechanical precision. "This is bad," Jake whispered, clutching his walkie-talkie tightly. "He's starting the harvest again. We have to do something." Ava swallowed hard, her mind racing. The Maplewood Resistance had been preparing for a moment like this, but it had come sooner than expected. They weren't ready for an all-out confrontation with the aliens. But they couldn't wait, they had to act now, before Mr. Delmont drained the school's energy and alerted any other aliens hiding in the town. We need to disable the orb, Ava whispered, her eyes locked on the floating device. If we can take that out, we might slow him down. Jake nodded, glancing down at the small gadget Derek had built using the alien device they'd taken from Mr. Delmont's house. It was a makeshift jammer, something they hoped would disrupt the aliens' tech long enough to give them an advantage. But they had never tested it in a real situation. "I'll set up the jammer," Jake said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Cover me." Ava nodded, her heart pounding. She watched as Jake darted from their hiding spot, moving quietly through the shadows toward the orb. The air seemed to hum with electricity, and the light from the orb flickered as it scanned the area, oblivious to Jake's presence. He crouched low, attaching the jammer to the base of the orb with trembling hands. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, the orb sputtered and flickered, its glow dimming. The green light in Mr. Delmont's eyes flared, and he turned sharply, realizing something was wrong. Ava's heart leapt into her throat. "Jake, move! Now!" Jake scrambled back toward the bushes just as Mr. Delmont raised his hand, sending a pulse of green energy toward the orb. The device shook violently, its lights flashing erratically. For a moment, it seemed like the jammer might not hold, but then, with a final sputter, the orb crashed to the ground, lifeless. Mr. Delmont let out a low, inhuman growl. His disguise flickered, his silver skin rippling as he glared at the now disabled orb. Ava felt a surge of triumph, but it was short-lived. Mr. Delmont turned his glowing eyes toward their hiding spot, his gaze locking onto them. "They know we're here," Ava whispered, her voice barely audible. "We have to move." Without another word, she grabbed Jake's arm, and they sprinted toward the side of the school, ducking behind a row of parked cars. The night was eerily silent now, as if the entire town was holding its breath. Ava's heart raced as she tried to come up with a plan. They had managed to disable one of the alien devices, but that wouldn't stop Mr. Delmont for long. And if he called for backup, they would be outnumbered and outmatched. "What now?" Jake panted, crouching beside her. "We can't take him on ourselves." Ava's mind whirled. "We need to get help. The others, the resistance. If we can regroup, we might stand a chance." Jake nodded, grabbing his walkie-talkie. "I'll call Sam and the others. We need all hands on deck." As Jake radioed for help, Ava peered around the corner of the car. Mr. Delmont was still standing near the entrance of the school, but now he was staring up at the sky, as if waiting for something. Ava's stomach twisted with dread. What if he was calling for reinforcements? What if more aliens were on their way? Suddenly, the sky above them began to glow. At first, it was faint, just a subtle shimmer in the clouds. But within seconds, the light intensified, and Ava realized with horror what was happening. An alien ship was descending from the sky. "Oh no," Ava breathed, watching in stunned silence as the massive craft lowered itself above the school. It was sleek and metallic, shaped like a perfect oval, with glowing lines of green energy pulsing along its surface. The ship was huge, larger than anything Ava had ever seen. It hovered silently, casting a long shadow over the entire school. Jake turned and followed her gaze, his eyes widening. "Ava, what do we do?" Ava's mind raced. The ship was here to collect the energy from the harvest, and possibly even more. If they didn't stop it, the aliens would drain the entire town, and there would be nothing left. But how could they possibly fight something that big? "We need to get inside," Ava said suddenly, her voice filled with urgency. "We have to get into the ship. If we can disrupt whatever is powering it, we might be able to shut it down." Jake looked at her in disbelief. "Get inside the alien ship? How?" "I don't know yet," Ava admitted. "But we don't have a choice. If we don't stop that thing, Maplewood is done for." Before Jake could argue, the walkie-talkie crackled to life. It was Sam. "Ava, we're on our way. Lily and Derek are with me. What's going on?" Ava pressed the button, her voice calm despite the chaos. "The aliens sent a ship. It's huge. We're going to try to get inside and shut it down. There was a pause on the other end, then Sam's voice came through again, shakier this time. Are you serious? Dead serious, Ava replied. Meet us at the back of the school. We'll figure out a way in. With a final glance at Jake, Ava led the way around the side of the school, keeping low as they made their way toward the back entrance. The ship's hum filled the air, a deep, throbbing sound that seemed to vibrate through their bones. As they approached the school's back doors, they spotted Sam, Lily, and Derek waiting for them, their faces pale but determined. What's the plan? Derek asked, holding up his backpack filled with makeshift gadgets. Please tell me we have a plan. Ava nodded, her mind working quickly. We're going to get inside the ship and sabotage whatever is powering it. If we can disrupt the energy flow, we might be able to stop it from completing the harvest. Sam looked up at the massive ship hovering above them, his eyes wide. And how exactly do we get inside? Ava glanced around, her eyes landing on the ship's underside. There, near the center of the craft, was a faintly glowing hatch. It was open, and a thin beam of light was shining down onto the roof of the school. There, Ava said, pointing. That's our way in. Jake frowned. But how do we get up there? Ava grinned, her eyes glinting with determination. We climb. The group made their way to the roof of the school, scrambling up the fire escape as quickly and quietly as they could. The ship hovered just above them, its massive bulk blocking out the stars. The hum of its engines was deafening now, and Ava could feel the vibrations in her chest. When they reached the roof, Ava peered up at the glowing hatch. It was closer than she had expected, only about 10 feet above the roof. But there was no ladder, no way to reach it. Derek stepped forward, pulling out one of his gadgets. I've been working on this grappling hook. It's not perfect, but it might get us up there. Ava nodded. Do it. With a quick flick of his wrist, Derek fired the grappling hook toward the hatch. It latched onto the edge with a satisfying clang, and Derek gave it a quick tug to make sure it was secure. All right, he said, handing the rope to Ava. Ladies first. Ava took a deep breath, grabbed the rope, and began to climb. Her arms ached as she pulled herself up, but she forced herself to keep going. This was their only chance. She couldn't stop now. When she reached the hatch, she swung herself inside, landing with a soft thud on the cold, metallic floor of the ship. The interior was dark, illuminated only by the faint green glow of the alien technology. It was cold, sterile, and completely silent. One by one, the others followed, until the whole group was inside the ship. They stood in stunned silence, taking in their surroundings. The walls were smooth and metallic, with strange symbols etched into them. The air felt thick, almost heavy, as if the ship itself was alive. We're in, Ava whispered, her voice barely audible. Now, let's find the power source. As they crept deeper into the ship, Ava's heart pounded in her chest. The corridors were eerily empty, but the low hum of the ship's engines filled the air. Every step they took seemed to echo, and Ava couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They reached a large chamber at the center of the ship. In the middle of the room was a massive, pulsating core of green energy, surrounded by alien machines that hummed with power. It was the heart of the ship, the source. Ava stood at the entrance of the massive chamber, her breath catching in her throat as she took in the sight of the alien power core. It pulsed with a deep, eerie green light, casting long shadows across the smooth metallic floor. The core seemed to vibrate with energy, sending ripples through the air like the heartbeat of the ship itself. The alien machines surrounding it clicked and whirred, working in perfect synchronization, feeding the ship with the energy harvested from Maplewood. This is it, Ava whispered, her voice barely audible. This is what's powering the harvest. Jake stepped forward, his face pale. We need to destroy it. But how? It's massive. Derek, always the most technical of the group, approached the machines, his eyes scanning the alien symbols etched into the panels. We can't just smash it. There's too much energy running through this thing. If we destroy it without shutting it down properly, we could blow up the entire ship, and the town with it. Ava's stomach twisted with dread. Then we need to figure out how to disable it safely. There has to be some kind of control system. Lily, who had been nervously watching the door, suddenly turned toward them. We don't have much time. Mr. Delmont's going to figure out where we went. We need to move fast. Ava nodded, her mind racing. Derek, see if you can hack into the system. Look for anything that can slow down or disrupt the power flow. We don't need to blow it up, we just need to disable it long enough to shut down the harvest and stop the ship. Derek knelt beside one of the alien panels, pulling out his modified tablet. He connected it to the machine with a makeshift cable, hoping his patchwork tech could interact with the alien systems. His fingers flew across the screen as he tried to decipher the alien code, his brow furrowed in concentration. This tech is advanced, Derek muttered, his voice tense. I think I can make sense of some of it, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. Ava watched him work, her heart pounding in her chest. Every second they spent inside the ship was a second closer to being discovered. The weight of the situation pressed down on her. If they failed, Maplewood and possibly the entire region would be drained of its energy. The aliens would win. Suddenly, Derek's eyes widened. I found something, he exclaimed, pointing to his tablet. There's a central control node that regulates the power flow to the harvest. If we can overload that, it should short-circuit the entire system. It won't destroy the ship, but it'll shut everything down. Can you do it? Jake asked, his voice urgent. I think so, Derek replied, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls. But it'll take a few minutes. And once I start, they'll know we're in here. Ava glanced toward the corridor they had come from. We'll hold them off. Do what you need to do. Lily, Jake, and Sam nodded, and together they took up positions near the door, ready to defend their only chance at stopping the aliens. Ava felt the tension in the air, the silence before the storm. They were outnumbered and outmatched, but this was their only shot. Derek tapped a final command on his tablet, and the chamber shuddered. A low hum filled the air as the alien core began to destabilize. The green light flickered, and the machines surrounding the core sputtered, their smooth operations faltering. It's working, Derek whispered. But it's going to take a little time to overload the system. We just have to hold on until... A loud clang echoed from the corridor, cutting him off. Ava's heart skipped a beat as she turned toward the sound. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, were approaching. They're coming, Lily whispered, gripping a small metal pipe she had picked up earlier. Ava's mind raced. Mr. Delmont, or whatever alien name he went by, was coming for them. And he wouldn't be alone. The ship had probably alerted the other aliens, and now they were converging on the core chamber. Get ready, Ava said, her voice steady despite the fear surging through her. We can't let them reach Derek. The footsteps grew louder, and soon the faint glow of green light spilled into the hallway. Ava took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she tightened her grip on the only weapon she had, a small, discarded alien tool she had found on the floor. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Suddenly, the door burst open, and Mr. Delmont stepped into the chamber, his silver skin rippling as he shed the last vestiges of his human disguise. His eyes glowed fiercely, and his tall, gaunt figure loomed over them. Behind him, two more aliens emerged from the shadows, their movements unnervingly smooth and precise. You've meddled for the last time, Mr. Delmont hissed, his voice cold and distorted. This world belongs to us now. Ava felt a surge of fear but pushed it down. She couldn't let him see her weakness. This is our town, she said, stepping forward. And we're not going to let you take it. Mr. Delmont's glowing eyes narrowed. Foolish human. You have no idea the forces you're dealing with. We know enough, Jake snapped, standing beside Ava. And we know how to stop you. Without warning, Mr. Delmont lunged forward, his movements unnaturally fast. Ava barely had time to react, ducking just as his hand swung toward her. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding his attack. The other two aliens advanced, their glowing eyes fixed on Sam and Lily. "Keep them busy!" Ava shouted, trying to think of a plan. They couldn't defeat the aliens head-on, not with their speed and strength. But if they could hold them off long enough for Derek to finish the overload, they might have a chance. Lily swung her metal pipe at one of the aliens, but it dodged with ease, moving with an inhuman fluidity. Sam threw a small device, a makeshift smoke bomb they had crafted earlier, at the feet of the second alien, creating a cloud of thick, swirling smoke. The alien hesitated for a moment, confused by the sudden lack of visibility. Ava dodged another swipe from Mr. Delmont, her mind racing. They needed more time. If they could just keep the aliens from reaching Derek, they could win this. Suddenly, Derek let out a triumphant shout from behind them. "I've almost got it. Just a little longer." But Mr. Delmont wasn't going to let them stall any longer. With a roar of frustration, he raised his hand, and a pulse of green energy erupted from his palm, knocking Jake off his feet and sending him crashing into the wall. "Jake!" Ava cried, rushing to his side. He groaned, clutching his arm, but he was alive. Mr. Delmont turned his glowing eyes toward Derek, his face twisted in rage. "You cannot stop us. This world will be ours." Ava's heart pounded. Mr. Delmont was going for Derek, and they had run out of options. In a split-second decision, Ava grabbed the small alien tool she had been holding and hurled it at the core. The tool wasn't designed as a weapon, but it sparked as it hit the machine, embedding itself in one of the glowing panels. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, the core let out a deafening hum, and the entire ship shuddered violently. The green light that had been pulsing steadily now flickered erratically, and the machines surrounding the core sputtered and sparked. "No!" Mr. Delmont roared, his voice filled with fury. "You've doomed us all." Derek's eyes widened as he stared at the core. "It's overloading. We need to get out of here." Ava turned toward the others. "Go! Now!" With the core destabilizing and the ship trembling around them, they bolted for the exit, sprinting down the corridors as fast as their legs could carry them. The walls vibrated violently, and sparks flew from the alien machines embedded in the walls. Behind them, Ava could hear Mr. Delmont's furious roars, but she didn't dare look back. They reached the hatch they had entered through and scrambled onto the roof of the school just as a loud explosion rocked the ship. The massive craft groaned and began to tilt, its green energy flickering out like a dying star. "We need to get off the roof," Jake shouted, grabbing Ava's arm as they ran toward the fire escape. One by one, they climbed down as fast as they could, the ship's hum growing louder and more erratic. By the time they hit the ground, the ship was buckling under its own weight. Its sleek surface had been marred by cracks and jagged openings, spilling out bursts of green light. It was collapsing. With one final, deafening explosion, the alien ship imploded, collapsing inward on itself. The green light flared one last time, then vanished completely, leaving only darkness and silence in its wake. Ava and the others stood in stunned silence, panting and covered in dust. The alien ship was gone, destroyed. They had won. But as the silence stretched on, Ava's mind buzzed with the enormity of what had just happened. The ship was gone, but the aliens, they might. The night air hung heavy in Maplewood as the last echoes of the alien ship's destruction faded into silence. Ava, Jake, Sam, Lily, and Derek stood in the schoolyard, staring at the spot where the massive ship had hovered only moments ago. Now, there was nothing left but charred debris, wisps of smoke, and an eerie stillness that seemed to envelop the entire town. They had done it. They had stopped the harvest. They had saved Maplewood. But as Ava stared at the sky, her chest still heaving from the adrenaline, she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling deep in her gut. This wasn't over. "We really did it," Jake said, his voice a mix of disbelief and relief. He slumped to the ground, still clutching his injured arm. "We stopped the aliens." "Yeah," Ava said quietly, though her eyes remained fixed on the horizon. The green energy that had once filled the night was gone, leaving the sky clear and full of stars. But somewhere, beyond those stars, she knew more of them were watching, waiting. For now. Lily knelt next to Jake, checking his arm. "We need to get that looked at," she said softly. "You took a hard hit back there." "I'm fine," Jake insisted, but the grimace on his face told another story. Derek stood a few feet away, staring at the wreckage of the alien ship. He held his tablet tightly, the glow of its screen reflecting on his face. "I can't believe we actually pulled it off. I thought for sure we were all gonna get vaporized or something." Ava let out a small laugh, but it was hollow. She had never been one to celebrate victories early, not when there were still so many unanswered questions. They had managed to stop one alien ship, yes, but how many more were out there? How long until they tried again? "We need to warn the town," Ava said, standing up. Her voice was firm, her resolve stronger than ever. "People need to know what happened tonight, and they need to be ready for whatever comes next." "How are we supposed to explain this to them?" Sam asked, still catching his breath. "No one's going to believe we just fought off aliens." "They will when they see the wreckage," Ava replied, nodding toward the smoldering remains of the alien ship. "And we have the device from Mr. Delmont's house. It's proof. They won't be able to deny it anymore." Lily stood up, dusting herself off. "But what about the other aliens? There could be more of them out there, hiding. What if they're waiting to strike again?" Ava's jaw tightened. "That's why we need to stay vigilant. We can't assume this is over just because we stopped one ship. We'll keep the resistance going, keep watching the town, and be ready for anything." Jake winced as he stood, leaning against Lily for support. "Ava's right. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. We need to make sure Maplewood, and the world, is prepared for whatever's coming next." They began walking back toward the center of town, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. The streets were eerily empty, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous hours. As they passed through the neighborhoods, they noticed that the decorations, costumes, and candy were still gone, taken by the harvest before they could stop it. But something had shifted. A strange sense of calm had fallen over the town, as if the spirit of Halloween was slowly returning, even without the physical trappings. When they reached the town square, Ava could see groups of people emerging from their homes, blinking in confusion and awe as they gazed up at the now clear sky. The vortex and alien lights were gone, but the lingering energy of the night still buzzed faintly in the air. Mayor Goodwin was there, his Dracula cape trailing behind him as he stood on the steps of the town hall, looking utterly baffled. Ava approached him, her heart pounding with a mix of exhaustion and urgency. "Mayor Goodwin," Ava called out, stepping forward. He turned to her, his face pale but alert. "Ava? What in the world just happened?" "The lights, the ship. I thought it was just some elaborate Halloween prank, but now..." "It wasn't a prank," Ava said firmly. "The aliens were real. They were stealing Halloween, draining the energy from it to power their ship. We stopped them, but I think there's more out there. We need to be ready." The mayor's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like he didn't believe her. But then his gaze drifted to the wreckage in the distance, the smoldering remnants of the alien ship still visible from the square. "My God," he whispered. "This is real, isn't it?" Ava nodded. "It is. And we're not safe yet." Mayor Goodwin swallowed hard, looking around at the town's confused and weary residents. "What do we do? How do we protect ourselves?" Ava straightened, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on her shoulders. "We organize. We watch the skies. We make sure no one is caught off guard again." Mayor Goodwin looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Ava. You've earned the town's trust tonight. Whatever you need, we'll support you." Ava felt a surge of determination. The Maplewood Resistance had started as a group of kids, but now, it was bigger than that. The entire town would need to stand together if they were going to survive the next wave of alien threats, whenever that came. That night, the town of Maplewood did something unexpected. Even without their decorations, without their costumes or candy, the residents gathered in the square and decided to celebrate anyway. There were no bright lights or inflatable pumpkins, no ghostly figures hanging from trees, but the spirit of Halloween had returned. Laughter filled the air, and children ran around playing games, their fear from earlier fading into the background. Jake, arm in a sling from his earlier injury, leaned against a lamppost with Ava by his side. "They did it," he said, a hint of a smile on his face. "Halloween's back." Ava smiled softly, watching the town come alive again. "Yeah. Maybe we saved more than just the holiday." Jake nodded. "We showed them that we can fight back. That we won't just roll over and let them take what they want." As the night went on, Ava and her friends slowly relaxed, enjoying the warmth of the community they had worked so hard to protect. But even as she laughed with her friends, even as the town rebuilt its Halloween spirit, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The aliens would return, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. And when they did, Ava knew she and the resistance would be ready. A month later, Ava stood in the makeshift headquarters of the Maplewood Resistance, the group having grown from a small band of kids to a full-fledged organization with support from the town. They had set up shop in the abandoned basement of the town library, using Derek's tech skills to outfit the space with alien detection equipment and communication devices. She scanned the sky through one of their makeshift monitors, her eyes sharp. For weeks, there had been no sign of the aliens, no strange lights or mysterious activity. But Ava remained vigilant. She wouldn't let her guard down. Just as she was about to turn away, the monitor flickered. A soft blip appeared on the screen, a small, pulsing light far off in the distance. Ava's breath caught. She leaned in closer, narrowing her eyes. Another ship. Her hand tightened around the edge of the monitor, her heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. "Jake," she called out, her voice steady but urgent. "We've got movement. Get the others." The fight wasn't over. But this time, they were ready.